Okay, we are live. So I've shared inside the Tea Time channel a link to the Google Docs of for office hours, and that's where it pretty much has the agenda and where people could type in questions that they have too outside of the Tea Time channel. That's kind of how office hours will work. In addition to this being recorded, I'll be highlighting major features. And so I'll start with, hey, my name's Derek. I'm the Dendron evangelist here at Dendron, and I'm excited to show some of these features today, especially an Airtable one that's been pretty interesting based on a workflow that we do at work here. So yeah, I'll just jump right into it, and I'll start sharing my screen here. Okay. All right, you should see my screen pop up here. And I'm going to first start off with one of the new features that we added called current week, which is just one of the new variables added to the schema template variables, so that if you want to use certain date time stamps that automatically get applied with the template when a new node is created, it now supports current week in addition to year, month, day. And there's a nice list. And so here's an example where I have a daily template, and I'm just including this snippet so that I could show, hey, here's current week. And I'm showing current week as like a way to reserve a note that I can create too. And the version of it that's created ends up rendering it down so that I have the year, the week, and when that was otherwise applied. So if I wanted to create another one, I could just show that as an example, is using the lookup with Control L. Let's say I'm going to create one for the 18th, and see those same timestamps were just rendered from this daily template. So instead of it having all these variable placeholders, it's now actually they're all rendered down. And that means I could highlight this link and go, well, this doesn't exist yet. And if this is supposed to refer to this week's, let's say, goals or something, I could just hit Control Enter and create that note. So it's kind of nice to have a little placeholder there and an easy way to make use of date timestamp variables that can be automatically added right in. So that's the first one. That's the first one I wanted to kind of show off. We have links also in the Google Docs to where the documentation is located. But inside, by the way, I'm inside the seed onboarding repository, which also has which I also link to in the Google Docs, but it includes all the Dendron documentation. So I could say I want to actually go look at, let's say, I think it's, how do I find schema template? Here we go. The schema template documentation would just be immediately included because it's a seed that we include in the workspace. And that shows right now all of these supported variables for these template variables. Awesome. Well, the other piece I wanted to show with this, another update to the way our schemas work, is that you now can use cross-vault templates and cross-vault references. So to explain what I mean, I'm right now looking inside of our Lang schema configuration, because in this template that we have in this like onboarding repository, I can hop into Lang let's go to Python, and you'll see a variety of notes inside of its tree, all these different children. And these are managed by a schema that we have that walks through, hey, here are the templates that would apply to different notes that you're going to create. And one problem you can run into at times is you might have multiple vaults in a workspace, and there might be a template that has the same name in different workspaces. And so that causes a conflict, because if you're creating a new note, schemas are looking across vaults. And if they see multiple, they won't know what to do by default. And so that's what the cross vault syntax is for, is that we're going to be able to, and I'm going to use an example here on when we're creating a new boolean note for a language, is that by default, it's lang.temp.boolean. But I can change this so that it's using what's called our cross vault syntax, which allows you to reference, I want a template that's in this vault with this name. And I'm going to go with my default vault because that's what the seed onboarding, its vault that's in place is. The other ones that we have, and I'll show in our Dendron YAML, we also have the wiki, which is the Dendron site seed. And we also have docs, which is the Dendron docs. So I would reference those differently. Like if I was saying, hey, this is actually from the wiki, I could type something like that in. Now, in this case, what if you accidentally put in a vault that doesn't exist? We'll show that in a sec. So here, all it is, 2 headers. I'm going to create a brand new note where I'll say lang.nym. Let's see, we're at D and boolean. Now see how all these note options exist, even though the lang.nym doesn't even exist yet? That's one of the bonuses of having a schema. Is schema will say, oh, I see that you're trying to create a note in this hierarchy, and you've created a system for yourself on how those names should exist. So that means I could just create one right now. Let's go with the boolean value. And there, it applied it just fine, which was the true false header with the cross vault syntax. What would happen is if this didn't exist properly, if you reference a vault that doesn't exist or a template that doesn't exist in that vault, you will get an error message. So I'll just demo that by putting vault 2. There is no vault 2 in my workspace. So, hey, updated schema. Let's do another one. Lang.erlang. And let's go with boolean. And this will say, hey, something's up with your schema. There's no vault that's in your reference. So that's the new feature that we added, is cross-vault syntax, to make sure you're always using the right template, even if you add new vaults over time, and that you don't accidentally break that template application process, with the added benefit of being told, hey, you're referencing a vault that's not even in your workspace. Okay. And I'll pop into the Airtable demo, because this will be a cool thing to show. I just changed the workspace that I had visible. This is a demo one that's outside of our seed onboarding. But this will reflect what we see in the documentation that I've linked in the Google Doc, where we have right now an Airtable, a pretty bare bones tutorial that's on, here's how you create and configure that service. And just to show what that means, is this is Pods v2, which is in preview right now, and it's a new way of Dendron managing pods. Right now we support Markdown exports, and Airtable exports. We might have to double check if we also have Markdown import in the like too. But I have links to a quick start on that export pod for Markdown, which is just a simple way of bringing your stuff to the clipboard. And this is what a configuration would look like. And if you're going to be configuring something new, you'd be like Control-Shift-P to open up my command palette, and you could say configure export pod v2, and these are the 2 that I've already created over time, but otherwise you could go straight into new export and you can start to be able to configure them. Now in my case, I have personal tasks. This is my Airtable, and I have this clipboard. I'm going to show first, let me open up Airtable, and let me see if I can zoom in a bit. So right now I have a task inside of Airtable that is, I have my base and I have the table, and this one's personal.tasks inside of tasks, this grid view, these rows. I have links in our documentation that points to what do these all mean and represent. And it's pretty much will look like a kind of a spreadsheet experience. And you could have Kanbans that help display different types of values. And this is kind of a way that we are internally right now being able to get insight into where is a task at its current state. And this is a reflection of a task, and I'll show the creation of a new task and how it appears. But write short story, what it looks like in here is this is the body of a note. And why don't I just split the page? Let's see. Yeah. So you can see I have my title, description. I have my title, description, and that are getting reflected in here. And then the body of the note goes into the notes. And I have my other attributes here that I've set up inside of my table so that I have tags. This is for art. So type art, status, a work in progress, etc. And it will also sync the Dendron ID. This is what allows you to continue to do updates over time. So if I actually wanted to update this, I could say, make sure it is at least 2,000 words. And I would do export pod v2, personal tasks. And it's now just updated inside the field because it saw, oh, this is my Airtable ID. I see it already exists. I'm going to update the record in place. And that's why you get a status update on the bottom also. As for creating a new note, I could do, let's do create task note. And let's do a new one that's like today. And actually, I already have a template created, but that I haven't submitted. Because I know which values I put in here. And by the way, you can customize what these are. We don't have a default, you can only use these type of attributes. And you would configure them inside of your Airtable setup in your Dendron configuration. In this case, I kept it pretty bare bones and easy. That's similar to what you see in the tutorial. And I want to submit this new note to exist inside of my board and inside Kanban so that I could demo that in a sec. I'll first do an export pod again, another personal task. This time it's one record created. You can see my note's been updated now, including Airtable ID, because it's now synced with that API. And now I have the new item here. Its main differences are priority status. And Kanban will show a reflection of this also. So that's kind of a quick demo on what's going on with being able to use Airtable and how you're able to export it. And like I said, export. Right now, we don't have an import feature, so Dendron is kind of your source of truth, where as you make updates in there, you're able to then see within Airtable a reflection of what's going on in your notes. And we have a troubleshooting link in the docs too, because if your fields have a mismatch, like if it doesn't exist inside of Airtable, you will get an error saying you're trying to push a note and sync a field that we don't have. And so you do have to keep on top of making sure that it supports those fields and those values. And Kevin, I don't know if you wanted to add anything extra, because I know that you've been pretty excited about this, and we have actually been using this daily at work, and it's been a really good experience from a visualization perspective of our data.
Yeah, and then first, awesome demo, Derek. And some things to add also is that So this is the more new version of pods, and you can also import. So export is now using, you can use the new preview for export. Import is still just the original pod interface. Some additional things you can do with the export is that, for example, like in Airtable, one thing that we do for managing tasks, which has been pretty useful, is we classify tasks according to scope. So like one scope might be something to do with Markdown, another scope might be with publishing. But then like we classify these, or like sometimes we'll change the names of these. And in Dendron, you can refactor and make sure that all the links are up to date. But because we now also manage them and we have them exported in Airtable, what we can do is we can refactor these scopes in Dendron and then also have those changes reflect in the exported scopes in Airtable. And so the idea here, and I think it's a concept I've mentioned before, is this idea of taking the structuring capabilities in Dendron, this ability to have a consistent structure and change it over time, but also now extend that into other tools. So, you can imagine that manually modifying or renaming like hundreds of tasks in Airtable is not something that anybody would want to do or attempts. But you can now do that because in this case, like Airtable or any other tool becomes another view for the data that you have in Dendron.
Yeah, that's pretty wild. The fact that you can recreate entire tables. You can recreate, like, if you ever had created a new Airtable account, for example. It's kind of like you could re-push all your data again. But yeah, the mass updates is pretty awesome. Let's see. I could also show workspace sync updates that we've done. So, all right.
Yeah. Also, any questions or comments? And just a reminder, you can either just unmute or put in the Google Docs any questions or comments.
I have a quick one, real quick.
Yeah.
So I saw all the fields that you guys were filling. Is there an option for checkboxes? I'm really just trying to track like a bunch of boolean values about my life, and I was literally this is kind of fortuitous because I was literally like making Airtable bases from scratch to do this today. Like I sat down at this desk to do that right now.
Well,
and so yeah.
We felt that need, and so this is why we did this. And yes, we do support checkboxes. I believe we call it the boolean field. I'll shoot over some links in the Google Doc.
Okay. Well, if it's in the documentation, I'll find it. I'm just cool. And this all has to go in the front matter.
It does not. So, for example, we support multiple fields. So, front matter fields is definitely the most common one. But for example, we also support tags and links, and those can go anywhere in the note. So you can have a tag in the front matter field, but you can also do like tag.foo. And if that is anywhere inside your note, then you can sync that to Airtable. And same with links to other notes. And this is pretty powerful in the sense that this also works with Airtable linked records. So for example, what that means is inside of Dendron, we have, let's say, like a project note that has tasks. We can export the project note to Airtable and export the tasks to Airtable. And when we export the project note, all the tasks inside the project node can become linked records inside that project. This is actually how we handle projects inside of Dendron. So it's actually pretty powerful because the associations you have inside of like this node has links to these other nodes, you can actually also now synchronize that and model that in Airtable.
I think I got all that. I had a cat, but yeah, that's pretty dope. You have to set it to true. You can't just like make a little checkbox, because I would like a form that I can just check on my on Obsidian on my phone.
Yeah, you can.
So
Sorry, explain that use case just to make sure we're on the same page.
Oh, you have to type true, or can you just have like I just have a list of checkboxes, like a list of markdown list items, and then I just check the boxes on my phone via the Obsidian mobile app.
Got it. Yeah, today the way that synchronization works is like you have a field in the front matter and then you like write in true. But like we're launching this in preview to get feedback and to figure out like how people best want to use this. So this is definitely something that we're iterating on. So if you have a specific use case, do give us details on that and we can how we can best support that.
Okay, you want that in the tea time deal, or
if in the tea time or the Google Doc. The Google Doc would probably be better just because it's more social.
I'll put it in the Google Doc.
Yeah.
Cool.
Awesome.
Thank you guys. This is awesome. I love all this.
I'm glad to hear.
Happy to hear that.
Awesome. Glad to hear. All right. Are there any other questions though? I see Ben's here and Michael back. Any other questions?
I have a quick one.
Yeah, go for it.
With the Airtable pods, is there a way to do password authentication? And Kevin knows why I need this.
So are you talking about actually, can you just give like one or two more sentences explaining the use case and then
Yeah. So if I want to be able to export and import to and from an Airtable that I access with password authentication, is there a way to do that right now?
So the way, I got what you mean. Today, the way that you set up your connection with Airtable is by adding API keys to your config file. So yes, you would be able to export with password authentication, but that's only because you would have API keys that let you do that.
I see.
One of the things that we actually want to look at is being able to run this as a GitHub action on the server side. So one problem with this model right now is it works great for like individuals, but like in a more like team-like setting, this would mean that you would have to give everybody API keys to like your common Airtable or whatever else it is you're using. Right. And one of the features we're launching this week is being able to run this on the CLI. And what that will allow us, for example, you can imagine when you have a common vault, it has a bunch of tasks, you push it, and then Dendron can look at, okay, what are all the task nodes? And then use the CLI to actually export that push. And what's nice about that is then you can just store that key inside the secret manager, in this case of GitHub Actions. And so nobody needs access to it, but everybody can still synchronize to it by just updating the note and pushing. And that's actually the model that I am thinking of moving to for the Dendrologist Vault, so that you guys can all like update the tasks and the forms, and that's just going to be done every time on push.
Well, looking forward to that then.
Yeah, that's a common model I've seen at a few workplaces where, be it GitLab CI or whatever your CI of choice is, that there is a secrets and potential and I guess masked variables type of values inside of your CI system, so that only the admins have access to that variable itself, and it's protected to maybe just run on a protected branch, so someone can't just try to output it or something. And